Hello, everybody! Time for another rant. This one is science and physics and blah 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 blah, and I've wanted to do it for a while. I'm going to cover my opinion of just my look at how people look at heat death, the heat death of the universe. As in, well, I'll go over it. Here's the current findings and the current beliefs of it. I've researched it and stuff like that. Here goes. Heat death of the universe is essentially, to many people in the field, if the universe is ever expanding, and there's no big crunch or no repetition of anything, no destruction then recreation of the universe, it just infinitely expands forever. Then after an infinitesimal amount of time, an insane amount of time, the entire universe's heat will spread throughout all the universe and diffuse enough so that the whole universe becomes the same level of heat, which they consider as zero, essentially, and no work can be done. Everything in the universe is just gelatin, essentially, and no atoms can move, and no chemical reactions can occur. Thus, the universe is useless and dead. That's the theory. It's based on second law of thermodynamics, that entropy will always increase. Entropy and entropy, for those who haven't taken yet or didn't listen to their chemistry class, entropy is heat, the heat something has. Entropy, the H in there. So, in a reaction, usually, the natural way of things happening is entropy goes down and entropy goes up. Entropy is disorder and chaos of chemical pieces, of atoms and structures and all sorts of things. A better example would be, in nature, we have erosion. We have, if there's a river, it slowly eats away at the rock. When it puts into it, the rock is a solid mass, and the river, and then volcanoes make rocks, and what they take is, they give matter a lot of heat. They increase its entropy and reduce its entropy to make it into a solid mass instead of a lot of pebbles. And then when that rolls out to the lake or the river, and the river starts eroding away at it, that's a natural reaction where it loses heat as it breaks, and it slowly becomes more and more chaotic and less uniform pebbles in the river that turn to sediment. And then, after pressure for a long time, it may turn back into a big rock, a sedimentary rock. Now here's the thing. Humans do a lot of things that go against nature, as in increasing entropy to reduce entropy. The process of making glass. Tiny little bits, heat them up in insane amounts, and it becomes one solid thing. But we forced it to be a plane of glass and not a piece of sand. If a glass window is given back to nature, what will eventually happen is it will somehow break. Fall out of your window, an animal will break it, or plants would grow in it and rip it apart. It would break and turn back into little pieces, and its energy would be released as it breaks into the world. So that's the essentially, like, taking that into an insane big stage would be the whole universe. After everything increases entropy and loses all of its entropy, distributing out between itself, it will become heat dead. A better example, if you still don't understand, would be if we sealed off Earth from everything, and it was just Earth, and no heat could get out of Earth and no heat could come into Earth, and Earth just had the heat it has and the fuel it has in its mantle and core. After so long, according to heat death of the universe theories, what would happen would be the Earth would stop producing energy, from its fuel, run out of fuel, and all the heat would start to distribute between itself. And if there were no humans or no special circumstances to go against the natural way, and everything kept distributing heat between itself and gaining entropy, then after an insane amount of time of things just rubbing against each other, rub, the ball of Earth that we had sealed away would just become a putty of everything at the same temperature, just no uniform, no continents, no ocean, just mud. Just a big hunk of all the different elements and everything that are still different, but it would distribute its heat throughout itself so that it would all be relatively cold. Now here's the thing. I think that how heat at the universe is seen, which would be that but a much, much bigger ball, or not if it's a plane and however you perceive it, I think it's very pessimistic, too pessimistic for me to be comfortable with, because there's no such thing as zero in the universe unless you're in a complete super vacuum, which doesn't exist in many cases. Very hard to find if it exists in a place. How could you reach zero by distributing? Like, the universe has so much heat in it, and if it infinitesimally gains space and it needs to distribute that heat through space and everything, sure, it will be cold. The percentage of the heat that 1 cubic area has would be really, really low. But it wouldn't be absolute zero, I don't think, because if energy gets distributed through everything, everything would have energy, everything would have heat, just a very, very little amount of it. And sure, chemical compounds would break down because electrons and atoms may stop being active enough to stay rigid. There would definitely be no solids. Well, there'd be no crystals, because crystals need to vibrate to keep each other solid, and if there's such little vibration after heat death that it does do that, yeah, it doesn't do that. But there's another law that is seemingly being ignored here. Here's the metaphor. Particles will collide into each other and I think it's called the excited particle something. The human comparison is a celebrity walks into a room and people start to crowd around the celebrity, and then people start to crowd around the crowd because they're wondering what the crowd is covering, and then it'll keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger until the only things that aren't in the crowd, the only people that aren't in the crowd are people who don't want to be in the crowd, and then you have a big ball of people. When things in the universe collide and group together for whatever reason, they have more mass than what they were before on their own. Not the combination. You know what I mean. So, example would be in a nebula in a very early solar system like ours. If it was very early, what it would be the protostar, and then a ring of matter, like an asteroid belt kind of thing, like a ring of Saturn. What happens after so much time is rocks bump into each other and rocks become bigger rocks. And then those rocks have bigger gravity, so they pull other rocks. And they pull and pull and pull until we have planets. Or gas will pull and they'll become a gas giant. What I'm saying here is, even though everything would be the same level of heat, everything would still move a little bit, I think. And if everything is moving a little bit, then things can still collide, be it very slowly. And when things collide, nothing gained energy, but the things have more energy than things surrounding them. Even though the quote, natural way is for everything to not collide, to stay separate, even in nature, volcanoes still happen. Things still crunch things together to get solidified. So why in this giant putty would things not collide and become bigger and then pull other things and then share their energy and distribute it into certain areas and fluctuate in and then fluctuate out, coming together and then breaking apart, coming together, breaking apart, and each pulse of things sharing their heat and then distributing it out would get different until you would have nebulas and planets and stars and all these things that would be, for a time, they would be unnatural clumps of energy, and then they would die, and then they'd spread out their energy again. Supernovas and all these, like, it happens. I don't see how, it's such a pessimistic thought to think that once heat death would happen, nothing would be able to collide with each other, because you can't have every particle in the universe stay still, because there is no still and blah blah blah. But I don't think heat death would be the end of all heat in the universe. I think it would be the death of all heat as we know it, because after it would be I think it'd be a perfect, take two cones or whatever shapes you want with a pinpoint on one end and an ever-growing thing on the other end, or solid thing on the other end, and put those two together with each other with a little point there, or maybe it'll be narrow or whatever it is. However long, whatever operation of time it would take for heat death to happen, for the universe to spread all of its heat and everything like that reversed, it would all come back together. It's just, that's the natural way. The natural way is things being cyclical, and things looping back and coming back and doing the same thing over and over again. How can it, who decided it was, quote, the natural way for entropy to rise and entropy to lower, to that be the thing that always happens, when you can't have matter exist in a confined space or with other matter where it never touches that other matter and a reaction never occurs. Sure, reactions like we know it may never occur, and if all the world's particles separated from their atoms and just drifted apart, then when they reform, they may not be atoms as we know them today. Whatever civilization may birth out of this new universe of new heat, might not have the same elements as we do today. And all sorts of laws and things could be reformed because heat could be different. Everything could melt and then reform differently. But it's such a pessimistic thought to think that it would die forever. And that just goes against so much physics logic. People praise laws of physics so much that they forget that other laws of physics conflict with them. There are no magic sentences, no magic books, no magic anything that just has infinite rule over something. If you're an American who praises the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution or anything like that, then you can praise it, sure, but it's not perfect. You can say it's perfect, but it's not perfect. It may have been very good for the time, but eventually texts get old. People who have religious texts, they're not magic. You can say they're magic, but they don't apply to every single person, and they can't fix everything in the goddamn world. When someone says something revolutionary and says that that everything does not revolve around the Earth, it's much more logical for things to and for the Earth to revolve around things, and things to revolve around those things, and whatever, that's revolutionary, and that's a huge thing. And yeah, you can praise that person for doing something different and making a step forward. That maybe it would have never happened, that step forward, who knows. But here's the thing. You can't give someone too much praise, because then you don't think for yourself. You don't think up new things. If all the laws of physics that have been set, all the laws of the universe that have been set, and you can never talk against those laws, then no new laws would ever be made. When someone would say, we have all of the laws are made. We know everything. These are all of the laws. Here's the loophole there. You're humans. You're a human, and you're a different human from that human that made that idea. Well, according to my other rant, we're all ideas. But you may not even be perceiving those laws how they were meant to be perceived. Someone could have copied them down incorrectly. And nobody's perfect, and nobody's saying is perfect, and we should always try to get new laws because every law that made in the universe, a lot of the laws, or not in the universe, all of our laws of physics, most of them were made at very different times. Newton's laws, and then Einstein's laws and everything, they weren't made to fit with each other, especially the ones in the past, because they didn't know of the ones in the future for them. You can't praise laws that were not made to fit each other, because then at some point you'll realize that they conflict with each other. You have to always strive to make new things for yourself and for the human race, or whatever you do it for. This is one problem I have with religious people. It's that in many religions you cannot give yourself any credit. And whenever anything happens, whenever you do anything, whenever anything's, you have to say that your religious figure did that, or it's because of that religious figure, and you have to praise that religious figure for something that happened, even when you can prove so much about it. And how can you make any progress if you never give yourself credit for being this awesome thing? Because humans, even if a religion turned out to be 100% true, which even if religion turned out to be 100% true by the first ever documentation of it, or whatever, it's documentation, and if there's documentation that a human wrote that documentation, essentially, depending on the definition of invent and definition of what a religion is, humans created that religion. Sure, you could say that humans created that religion for that figure, but you just gotta give yourself and your fellow humans credit for things, or else nothing will ever be done for the sake of just, why the hell not? Or for the sake of, we have some kind of mantle we have to uphold for the universe as being sentient beings. Whatever it is, you gotta give yourself some credit. You can say it's pride, but all of these kind of things make the world go round. Make our world go round, because we defined what a world was. If you were never allowed to define anything for yourself, if you were never allowed to have a personal definition, which, no matter what, here's your contradiction. Hello, people, Earth to people. No matter what, you have a personal definition because you interpret things differently than everyone else interprets things. You need to, and you always will interpret things differently and give yourself some credit. You need to give yourself some credit, or else nothing new will ever happen if you're just such a drone. So, sure, someone can make this awesome idea of heat death in the universe, and it's really cool, and you could praise it all you want. But if everyone praised this thing, then there would never be that person who goes, that's a bit pessimistic, and checks some other things and goes, there are some other laws and some other things that make physical sense that go against that. And if we never have people conflicting, then new stuff never happens. And if something turns out to be wrong, if an alien race would show up and say, you've got this wrong, then you'd just be a drone. You wouldn't be able to accept the news. So, as always, two-part rants where it goes from one thing into another. But heat death of the universe, I think it'd be cyclical. I think it'd be death of only heat as we know it. And I think that it's just a natural way for things to happen both ways. Because here's my definition of how something is a natural way. That it can happen in nature. And volcanoes go against the, quote, natural way of entropy versus entropy. So how can you say that one's the natural way when they're both inevitable? What I'd like to see is the opposite of heat death. Well, no, that's actually the big crunch. Never mind. But point being, question shit. Don't be a smartass about it, but question shit. Define if this makes sense to you. And if it doesn't, don't say that there's someone smarter than you working on it. You can say that, but you should still, if it means something to you, then you should try to figure out why it means something to you and why you should stuff, whatever. But if you're a drone and you don't like that stuff and you physically cannot comprehend or think for yourself in that kind of way, then let yourself be led, but just do it safely. Don't be a dick. Ciao, everyone.